football, I don't know about you. Who else could it be but your man Lou? Yeah.
Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to Thursday Night Football Overtime. And you know what? Panthers, Steelers. Let's change the score. I don't want to disrespect the Panthers. They did just tack on another touchdown, so it's not 14 anymore. It's 21. Not that that makes any difference, but I'm all about fairness. I'm all about doing what's right. And I've been here before, man. They shouldn't feel bad about this. This could happen to anybody, you know. And I've talked about the Panthers and people sleeping on the Panthers. I still feel like they're being slept on, and they'll be even more slept on. People that may have heard the alarm and may have gotten up towards the Panthers may just hit that alarm and go back to sleep after this game. I warn you and I advise you against doing that. This is still a good football team, but they ran into a buzzsaw today. This is the Steelers team that now, after this game meets its completion, would have won 5 straight games. They're playing at a very high level right now, and when you make the kind of mistakes the Panthers made tonight against a good football team, this is the end result. You get your ass handed to you. And just as this is a big-time win for the Steelers. I thought this was going to be a good competitive football game. I was wrong. And as my man Captain Spartan would say, the Steelers are continuing to tank. If tanking means winning, then the Steelers are tanking. That's 5 straight tank jobs in a row by the Steelers, if we listen to Captain Spartan, as they continue to win football games really decisively. They've looked impressive in their victories on this 5-game win streak. And remember when we talked about the Steelers at 1-2-1 and how the Steelers may not be a good team this year, and the Le'Veon Bell situation may be weighing on this franchise very heavily, and yada, yada, yada. I talked about on the podcast about James Conner, so I'm not really going to elaborate on him too much tonight because I did that on the podcast. I think this guy has been outstanding. I will say this, though. Much like Le'Veon Bell, I didn't think Le'Veon Bell was going to be a great NFL running back. Why? Because he was too overweight. He was heavy. He wasn't in the best shape. Well, after his rookie season, which he looked unimpressive to me, Le'Veon Bell rededicated himself to the weight room, lost a bunch of weight, came back a different running back, and the rest is history. Le'Veon Bell is the Le'Veon Bell that we all know and love today. And so I think James Conner did the same thing. Last year I saw James Conner. He looked like an average NFL running back, a backup, essentially. And I thought he got into the best shape of his life. And I don't know if he could have accounted for what was to come, that Le'Veon Bell would hold out and this holdout would extend to week 11. But he was ready for the opportunity, I can say that much. He got into the best shape that I've seen him in since about his freshman or maybe his sophomore year at Pitt. And he looks in tremendous shape, and it's starting to play itself out on the field. And the guy's been dynamic for the Steelers, and I talked about that on the podcast. But this was a beatdown of epic proportions from early on. And the thing I've said about the Panthers, and it's kind of the same thing that I've said about the Rams, you can score on these teams. These are teams that traditionally we're used to them being really good on the defensive side of the football. And it seems like now that their offenses have caught up to the defense and surpassed them in many instances, now the defense isn't as good. And I don't think the Rams defense is any good right now. And maybe when Aqib Talib comes back, maybe that changes some things. But unless they're getting pressure on your quarterback, you can move the football on the Rams. I've talked about that on lockdown coverage. I feel the same way about the Panthers. Don't allow that 11th overall rank to fool you. They have the capability of, in any given week, shutting you down and making some plays. But in any given week, you can get 30 on the Panthers. I've seen teams scoring them. I saw, and again, usually it takes an explosive offense to do that. But still, I watched Tampa Bay rack up yardage and points in the second half. That game should have been over. It was 35-7. That game should have been done. Instead, the Panthers allowed the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to climb within 7 before closing the door and slamming it shut and winning that game 42-28. I watched them give it up against Atlanta earlier in the season in a loss. I've seen teams score points against this Carolina Panthers defense like tonight. Some blown assignments, You know, everybody was talking about how good James Bradbury has been and how he's this and he's doing that. And, okay, first play of the game, he gives it up in cover 3, being nosy. And, okay, give up a 75-yarder after your offense impressively drove it down the field and scored a touchdown to start the scoring in this game. Give it up on one play. And to me, that was the beginning of the end. Really, the game swung on the Cam Newton interception. You can't do that. You just can't do that if you're Cam Newton. I knew what he was trying to do. He was trying to get it to Greg Olsen. Greg-o! In the middle of the field on a tight end screen. And he might have gotten some yardage if Cam could have gotten him the football. But bottom line is, you've got to eat that one. You've got to find a way. He had enough time to see T.J. Watt coming his way and get out of the end zone. And if you take a sack or if you just airmail it 30 yards down the field and it's in the direction of a player, you might be able to get away with it. If not, at least you'll take the intentional grounding, but not the safety because you got out of the end zone. But you can't run all the way into the end zone 2-3 yards deep, see the guy coming at you, and still hold on to the football, and then the last second try to get rid of it. And that was a disaster. Vince Williams with a great pick and return into the end zone. And to me, that was the beginning of the end for the Carolina Panthers. They got great pressure on Carolina, on Cam Newton in this game, did the Pittsburgh Steelers. And they noticed something early. I don't know exactly what, but they had confidence that they could win one-on-one matchups. And then they started bringing blitzes, and they just had trouble protecting Cam Newton all night. And when it rains, it pours. When you start to have mistakes, they talked up the rookie, and he's had a hell of a year, Dante Jackson. But he had to get blessed tonight. He had to get bless him. He had to get blessed tonight, you know. And he was over there crying about pass interference. That wasn't pass interference. That wasn't OPI. All right, that's what the good receivers in this league do. That's what the best of the best do. Create separation, and it's just ever so slight. It's not the most egregious push off you've ever seen. Just a little something to give you just enough space for the quarter. And Ben throws a beautiful deep ball, doesn't he? Doesn't he? Golly, that thing dropped right in there like it just fell out of the sky right into his arms. And didn't have to break stride, walks into the end zone. And like I said, when it rains, it pours. Those kinds of things happen when nothing goes your way on a night like this. Those types of plays happen. And so you give up a 53-yarder, a 75-yarder. You fumble the football. That leads directly to a Steelers touchdown. You give up a pick six on a bad play by Cam Newton, picked off by Vince Williams, taken to the crib. And every other mistake that you could imagine. The defense was gashed tonight. They gave up big play after big play, whether it was tight ends catching the football, getting yards after the catch, whether it's running backs catching the football, getting yards after the catch, whether it was Juju Smith-Schuster getting yards after the catch. It really didn't matter who it was tonight. They were making plays. The Steelers were very efficient. I mean, think about this for a second. Ben started the game 8 of 8. And at one point, Ben was 15 of 16 for 260 some odd yards and 3 touchdowns and no interceptions. And he had a perfect quarterback rating. I mean, it was a rough go of it for Carolina's defense on this evening, as it was for their offense in terms of protecting Cam Newton. I thought they actually moved the football well when Cam had time, and Christian McCaffrey got off tonight, and he scored 3 touchdowns. As a matter of fact, every single touchdown scored by the Carolina Panthers was scored by CMC. So they had some things that they took advantage of, some matchups out of the backfield with McCaffrey isolated on a linebacker, and they were able to win those early. But the problem was when those weren't available, when they weren't able to get it out of Cam's hands quickly to Olsen or to CMC, that's when the problem ensues because they couldn't protect him tonight. And I think there might have been at least 5 or 6 sacks on the evening, and everybody was getting a piece. You know, at one point it was wide. At another point it was the Kentucky edge rusher, Bud Dupree, off the edge, and he could add another sack. He missed Cam on one, and Cam ended up getting out of the pocket and throwing it away, or else he would add another sack. You saw Hayward get in there and get one. They were just sharing it, man. They were just having fun. You know, they were getting at Cam, having a meeting of the minds in the backfield, and it was rough on that offensive line that had done a really good job up until this game of protecting Cam Newton. And over this win streak that the Panthers have had, their offensive line has been stellar, whether it's run blocking like they did against Cincinnati in a game where Christian McCaffrey had over 170 yards rushing, whether it was pass blocking as they did against Baltimore a couple of weeks ago, or they did against Tampa Bay last week. They've done a really good job of keeping Cam Newton upright and opening holes in the run game. That was not the case tonight. They opened up some holes early in the game, especially on that first possession where McCaffrey was able to have some big runs and help them get down the field and score. But like I said, too many mistakes for the Panthers tonight to win on the road against a team that is surging right now in the Pittsburgh Steelers. Like I said, you want to win on the road against quality opponents. You have to minimize the mistakes, and you have to play outstanding football. And they simply did not do that tonight. And because of it, they get their doors blown off. Let's see if the score remains the same. It's probably still 52-21 if I had to guess. And so it's a rough show. It happens. The good thing is it counts as one. You know, you get your ass beat like this, and you just go back home, lick your wounds, and you come back and you do it again next week. You know, and if you're the Panthers, you just put this one behind you. You just put this game behind you. You're 6-3. Everything you want is still right there in front of you. The division isn't going anywhere as long as you continue to play consistent football. The Saints are going to lose games down the stretch, 1 or 2 more games at least. You have them 2 more times, twice in the final 3 weeks of the season. So before it's all said and done, you'll get to help decide what happens in this division. And like I said, you just wipe the slate clean. You wipe this one from the memory bank, and you keep it moving. If you're the Steelers, it's a big win. This is a tremendous win at home against a quality opponent. I mean, Baltimore was reeling last week, and you got those guys. You went into Cincinnati, and you beat those guys. You win here. You beat Cleveland. It's been impressive what you've done on this win streak, especially from where you started. I mean, this is a 1-2-1 football team that seemed like they were on the brink of destruction, and all of a sudden from the ashes rises a team that looks all of a sudden like a true AFC competitor and real contender again. I didn't think, and I said this at the beginning of the year, I said without Le'Veon Bell, the Steelers will win football games and they'll make it to the postseason. They are not a Super Bowl contender. That's false. And I couldn't have imagined they were going to get the production out of the running back position that they've gotten out of James Conner. I couldn't have imagined that. I don't think anybody thought that they would get the production that they've gotten out of James Conner. I don't think anybody thought that that was going to be the case this season. And I've been floored, and I've talked about it the last 3 weeks, especially on lockdown coverage. I've been amazed at what this man has been able to do. And the fact that he is able to catch the football and make the plays, make guys miss, run over defenders, and just yards after contact for him, and the patience, some of the patience that Le'Veon Bell exudes, I think it's rubbed off on James Conner by osmosis. I think he has a little bit of that. There was a run tonight where he was patient. He stuttered. He went to the left, then cut it back to the right, and all of a sudden a hole appeared, and he gets through the hole, and he ends up getting 8 or 9 yards on the play. And there was another one where he did the same exact thing, and then he got through the hole, and he tripped over Jesse James' leg, and it ended up being a 1-yard gain. And if he doesn't trip over Jesse James's leg, who knows what that play could have been. You saw Mike Tomlin's reaction on the sidelines. He's like, oh, and you saw James Conner's reaction because he knew if he would have gotten to the second level on that play, that could have potentially been him hitting his head on the goalpost. So the production they've gotten from the running back position has opened up everything else for them, because now what it does is it sets up play action. It gives Ben opportunities to take shots down the field. You get situations where you get guys running down the field. I mean, there was a play in this game where the Panthers dropped 9 defenders. They rushed 2 guys. Ben is just chilling in the pocket. And this is my whole thing. If you're going to drop 9, how is it that the best player on the field in Antonio Brown still manages to get a one-on-one matchup with a safety? I don't understand these things. You're going to drop 9 guys. The one dude that's not catching the football is 84. And those are the kind of mistakes that the Panthers made tonight. You know, you can't win like that on the road. You know, you can't make the kind of mistakes that they made tonight and expect to win. And tip your cap to the Steelers. You know, they made all the plays tonight. I mean, at the beginning of the game, they scored 21 points in the first 4 minutes of this game. Think about that for a second. 21 points, and it was still 10 minutes and some change left on the clock in the first quarter. I mean, it was amazing, the barrage that the Panthers endured after scoring on the opening possession and doing it in about 3 minutes and some change. And then they look up and they're like, what the hell happened? We're down 21-7. I mean, it was crazy. And you knew it was going to be a rough night. You knew it was going to be a rough night when that happened, and there was really no answer by the Panthers. And they even had a drive that you thought maybe if they could get in the end zone, they could cut it to, 21-14, and then they self-destructed on the drive, gave up a sack, had a penalty, and it is what it is, man. It is what it is. Like I said, these things happen. Both of these teams are quality football teams. The Steelers are just right now playing at another level, and the Panthers, sometimes these types of ass whoopings come and they refocus your football team. And I don't know if the Panthers needed to be refocused. I mean, they were playing good football themselves, but I think it puts them back in their proper place. Maybe we thought they were, and I still think they're a good football team, but maybe we thought that they could challenge New Orleans in that division. Maybe not. Not after this kind of performance. Normally, the really good teams in the league don't get their asses beat like this. Generally. And when I say that, I mean the elite teams. Elite teams, it's rare you see the Patriots get their ass whooped like this. It's rare to see the Steelers get their ass. We've seen the Steelers lose like this. Last year, Jacksonville put it on them. And they turned out not to be one of the, they turned out to not be the team that we thought they were. And generally, when you get your ass beat like this, you're not the team that has the capability of making it to the Super Bowl, generally speaking. Now, you could have a bad day, have some mistakes, everything that can go wrong does go wrong, and it's not a true reflection of who you are. But generally speaking, the elite teams in this league find a way to keep, even when they don't have their A game, find ways to keep games relatively competitive. This game was anything but. But in any event, you're still 6-3 after the loss. You're in great shape in the NFC conference. You're going to make the playoffs as long as you're able to play consistent football. And throw this one out of the window. This is an outlier. This is not a true reflection of who you've been this season. Throw this one out, and if you continue to play the kind of football that you've played for the first 9 weeks of the season, and let's say you finished up down the stretch 4-4, that's 10-6. That should be good enough to get you in. All right, you may not win your division at 10-6, 11-5 with the way the Saints are playing, but 10-6, 11-5 will be plenty enough to get you into the postseason if you're Carolina. And I can't see them finishing any worse than 10-6 this year. They're too good of a football team to finish with a record worse than 10-6. So we'll see what happens and what becomes of Carolina, and if this has a lingering effect. The good thing is it's a Thursday night ass whooping. It's a Thursday night special, so you get some time off to figure things out and get back to the drawing board and be better in week number 11. As for the Pittsburgh Steelers, you feel damn good. You got the win versus the Ravens, so you split that season series. You've already beaten Cincinnati in Cincinnati, so now they have to come to Heinz Field. You've already taken care of the Browns, so now you're looking at a situation where you've only got one division game left, and that's Week 17 at home versus Cincinnati. And if you continue to play good football, you probably won't even need that game. And unless you're looking for AFC first round bye, in that case, then you may need Week 17. But that's a little ways out off the distance. But you've seen Kansas City, and although they beat you and they had you big early in that game, you rallied and you made that game competitive. And that's what I'm talking about. If you're a real, true team, you'll make a game competitive even when you don't come with your A game. They were down 35, I believe it was, to 7 in that game versus Kansas City earlier in the season at home. And I think they ended up being in a game that was like, I think that game was 42-33 or something. It ended, something along those lines. They made it a competitive game. And that's what the good teams do. You generally don't see an elite team get their ass handed to them for 4 quarters. You might get your ass handed to you for a half, but you're going to make it just like the Rams. That's a great example. They were getting their asses destroyed in New Orleans in the first half of that game. But they're too good of a football team to lay down and allow you to pound them for 4 quarters. What do? Run off 21 unanswered points, tie that game at 35, and almost have a shot to come back and win it before giving up 10 unanswered and losing the game 45-35. That's what the elite teams in this league do. The Chiefs looked like they were well on their way to an ass whooping at Foxborough in the first half where Patrick Mahomes turned it over and they made mistakes. What did they do? Played outstanding football in the second half and almost stole that football game, ended up losing 43-40 in a thriller. That's what the elite teams do in this league. You don't get your ass handed to you for 4 quarters. So I don't think Carolina's elite, but I think they're on that next tier down. So they're still a damn good football team. But all I know is that the Steelers are playing at another level right now. And I think they've just entered their name. If they were right on the outskirts and the outside looking in on the conversation between the elites in Kansas City and New England, I think now they've been able to just mosey their way into that conversation. And now they're eavesdropping. And now I think they're actually in that conversation for one of the teams that can come out of the AFC. I think I had counted them out a while back, thought that they'd be a solid team, but not good enough to compete with the elites in the AFC. I think they've just thrown their name back into that hat as one of the elites in the AFC conference once again. But in any event, let's get to your comments and let's see what you guys have to say after the 52-21 ass thrashing by the Pittsburgh Steelers in this game. The 20th Mike says, this game showed the Steelers are back from the dead, but I got a question. Why did they leave Cam out there after the 3rd quarter? Football is a weird sport. It's one of those sports where generally if you're getting your ass whooped, teams don't usually empty their bench. You know how basketball team waves the white flag? It might be 8 minutes left in the game, and if they know they got a back-to-back or this is the second night of a back-to-back and they're just like, hey, we're tired, we don't have it tonight, they'll pull their starters. You'd be like, man, it's still 8 minutes left in the game. You're only down 22. You know, NBA is about runs, and you could go on a 18-4 run, and next thing you know, it's an 8-point lead with 3 minutes left. Teams will give up in the NBA, like, nah, tonight's not our night. They'll pull the starters and throw in their whole bench. Football, they don't do that. They don't wave the white flag until literally 4 or 5 minutes left in the game. And it's weird because, you know, when you've got a player like Cam Newton that is literally 80% of your offense, what they do with Cam Newton, he's a huge part of their run game. He is the only guy that can deliver the football on that football team. If they have to go to their backup quarterback, all hell would break loose in Carolina. He accounts for probably 3/4 of their offense because of his ability to run it and his contribution to the run game, and because of his ability to control that offense. They have to have Cam Newton to have any chance of doing anything of note. And to have that guy in the game after the beating that he had taken throughout the course of that hit by TJ Watt, they're lucky that he didn't tear something there. He was in a bad spot. He was in a very vulnerable position when he was trying to throw that football, and he's lucky he didn't tear his pec muscle there. So, you know, after taking the kind of abuse that he took in this game, you would think that they would have just said, all right, enough's enough. There is nothing to be gained here. And I think they were just trying to have them leave the game on a positive note. Like I said, football is a weird sport because you'll see teams do that where they're like, hey, we want to leave on a positive note. I watched one of our most valuable players earlier in the season in a game where we were getting our brains bashed in, have his rib cartilage all destroyed, all because we wanted to go for 2 in a game where we were losing 40-19. One of your best players, one of your most irreplaceable players, gets his ribs, breaks one of his ribs and tears a cartilage, all because you want to go for 2 in a meaningless 40-19 score in the 4th quarter. You're not coming back. This game is over. Your best player should be out of the game at that point. And so I've seen guys get injured this year behind some nonsense of not being pulled from a game early enough. I'm just glad Cam didn't succumb to the same fate. But it's weird because in football, I've seen the Panthers come back. We all know about the 21 unanswered points in Philadelphia in the 4th quarter. They weren't going to do that tonight. They couldn't even stop the Steelers on offense. There was nothing to be gained by Cam playing at any point in the 4th quarter. This game was over. But football is one of those types of weird sports. Dark Steeler 1995 says, when you reviewed James Conner, draft profile, you said he isn't a starting running back in the league. Are you finally ready to accept that he's amazing and has officially passed Le'Veon Bell? I wouldn't say he passed Le'Veon Bell. I think he has elevated his game, and I kind of spoke to this at the top of the show. He's elevated his game to a level that I didn't think he could. I'll definitely admit that. And I didn't think he was in good enough shape. And he's gotten his body into great shape. And I did the same thing for Le'Veon Bell. I didn't think Le'Veon Bell was capable of what he has become in this league. But Le'Veon Bell dedicated himself to getting in the best shape of his life and then he turned on the switch. And James Conner did the same thing. After his rookie season, I don't think he was in the best shape. He came back in tremendous shape in year 2, and he was outstanding, and he's been outstanding, and I've talked about that ad nauseum, especially on this week's podcast where I gave the man a lot of love. But he's not better than Le'Veon Bell. But I'll tell you this much. If I'm the Steelers, when Le'Veon Bell comes back, because he is coming back, because he's going to sign, because he wants to have that year of accrued, you have to have that year accrued if you want to get to free agency. So, or else the Steelers will be able to slap him with the same franchise tag they slapped him with this year. He comes in for these final 6 games, and he's able to sign that franchise tag. Then he'll get credit for this year, for him playing this year. Even if he doesn't play a down, he'll get credit for it. And then if the Steelers decide to slap the franchise tag on him again next year, then it'll be like something ridiculous, like 30% of what he got this year. So it'll be some astronomical number. But in any event, if I'm the Steelers, James Conner has earned the right to be the starting running back. And when Le'Veon Bell comes back, I wouldn't even bother giving him starters reps. He'll get on the field, but it won't be in a starting capacity. That's how I would maneuver that. But we'll see what they decide to do. Le'Veon Bell's still a special running back in this league, nonetheless. The 20th Mike says, there has to be a new rule for primetime where if a team gets blown out like this, they end it a quarter early so we can all go to sleep and get up early in the morning for work. There's no way. You know, we've seen miraculous comebacks before. That wasn't going to happen tonight. But, you know, football is a game where you don't call it early. You know what I mean? You never know what could happen in a game. You know, and teams in blowout situations, which to me sometimes is dumb. Like I heard the Redskins, after we got our ass whooped by the Saints, they were talking about building momentum for the next game with some offensive drives late. And I'm like, what are you talking about? That shit doesn't carry over. And they're playing soft at that point. They just don't want to give it up quick. So everything you get in those situations is pretty much like, you throw that out of the window, because we weren't playing for real at that point. We just don't want you to score quickly. We just want you to eat up as much clock as you can so we can get the hell out of here. And so I've always been one of those people like, man, just run the ball and let's get the hell out of here. And so it is what it is. Cloud says, this was an ass whooping, man. Steelers D playing better. They are. I was amazed at how much pressure they got on Cam. That was the one thing that surprised me tonight. I still think there are some deficiencies with the Steelers defense, especially at linebacker. I still think they're too slow. You know, John Bostic isn't the fastest guy in the world. Neither is Vince Williams. I still think you can exploit them. Christian McCaffrey made it look easy getting out on the edge and catching the football. And I think you can expose their linebackers, but they're getting better in the secondary. And I think what was so impressive in this game was the ability to pressure Cam, you know, and not always have to blitz to do it. You know, Bud Dupree looked explosive off the edge. TJ Watt was a nuisance in this game. That was the most impressive part of the performance defensively tonight for me. Enrique Valencia says, man, that 2017 running back class was deep. McCaffrey is a monster. I told anybody that would listen that he would be a good football player, and you could see it at Stanford that the ability to catch it out of the backfield was going to be a true difference-making ability for him. And we've seen that throughout his career. He may be a better pass catcher than he is a runner at this point. He scares teams way more as a receiver out of the backfield than he does as a running back. But that doesn't mean he can't hurt you out of the backfield. Just ask Cincinnati when he went bananas and ballistic on them earlier in the season. Yin Yang Domain says, what do you think about the NFC East commentators Mark Holmes or Philly 500? I have no idea who those guys are. None. Emperor Meat says, game was a complete ass whooping. What the hell happened to the Panthers defense this season? It's been brutal, especially in the secondary. Yeah, they've had mixed match parts. You know, the thing is, you add Eric Reed in 5 weeks ago, maybe. Then you got a rookie in Dante Jackson, so there's growing pains there, even though he's played well, and I think he's got 4 interceptions this season. But there's going to be growing pains with a young corner. James Bradbury has played well this year, but he's still a guy that is still growing as a corner too. So, they're going to be growing pains in the secondary. But what I've still been a little bit disappointed with the Panthers is the lack of pass rush at times. They don't have one true difference-making pass rusher. Every week it's somebody different, and, it all depends on who steps up. J-Pep, yeah, he's still good for a sack or two. He got one tonight, but it wasn't a true win right off the snap, beat the edge, the tackle all around the edge and get to the quarterback. It was Ben steps up. He's got time. No one's open, and J-Pep loops back around and sacks him. I mean, it was more of a coverage sack than anything else. They've got the Obata guy, Effie Obata, that had a big game versus Cincinnati. Every now and again, you'll get a appearance out of some of their other guys. They've got I can never remember his name. That goes to show you just how inconsistent he is. But you'll get something from him every now and again. Their other rusher, I think he's number Addison. Mario Addison is his name. You'll get something from him every now and again. I didn't hear Addison's name one time tonight. He may have even been hurt, for all I know. I didn't hear anything from him. You don't get as much pressure from the interior as you used to. I don't think Star Latulila's departure made that big of a difference, did it? But you can run it on this Panthers defense. You didn't used to be able to do that. Dontari Poe hasn't had the impact that they thought that he would at this point. They don't get a lot of pressure on the quarterback from the interior. I thought KK Short would be a beast right now, and he's still got his moments, but he's not as consistent as he once was. I think that's probably been the biggest surprise to me is the lack of consistency up front getting pressure on the quarterback. It varies from week to week. 1 week they'll get 5 sacks and they'll look dominant up front. The next week they won't even come close to sniffing the opponent's quarterback. It's been weird for the Panthers because you're used to them being dominant on defense, and their offense is so good this year. North Turner has them, and I talked about that on the podcast. North Turner has this offense buzzing this year, but the defense is just average at best. And that's what's going to ultimately hold this team back from doing anything of note this season. Cloud says, seeing these 2017 running backs go off got me sick. You telling me we couldn't have gotten one of these dudes? You did. Remember? You got the undrafted kid, Corey Clement. See, you got one. Jazzy E says, I believe the Panthers regret allowing Josh Norman to walk because they haven't been the same since shaking my damn head. I don't think they regret allowing him to walk. They weren't going to pay him what he was going to get from the Redskins. They just weren't willing to do that. I think I would tell you this with 100% certainty. If Norman would have stayed in Carolina, he would have still been an all-pro cornerback. I can tell you that. He was a perfect match for their defense. They knew how to use him, and his confidence level in Carolina was ridiculous. It was through the roof. He started smelling himself. He got to D.C. He talked the coordinators into allowing him to play man-to-man. That's not who he is. He's a cover 3 corner that stays on top of the receiver. It stays deeper than the deepest. And with that pass rush that they used to have, it was a perfect combination because he could match it up and marry it with the rush, and he knew the ball had to come out at a certain point, so he was able to jump routes. In Washington, the pass rush is inconsistent at best. He doesn't know when the football is coming out, so he can't be over-aggressive. When he is, he gets beat. He's lacking in confidence right now. He's not the same confident defender that showed up in Washington 3 years ago. And I don't think they miss him, but he would have been a much better football player had he stayed in Carolina. I can assure you of that. Cloud says, we need an all Pennsylvania Super Bowl for the culture. No, we don't. Yin Yang Domain says, can this Steelers team beat the likes of Kansas City, Los Angeles in terms of the Rams, or New England? I doubt he was talking about the Chargers, because yes, they can beat the Chargers. So I'm thinking he's talking about the L.A. Rams. Yeah, I think they can beat any of those teams. For some strange reason, the Patriots have the Steelers' number. The Chiefs beat them earlier this season, so The Chiefs probably feel confident. Similar to what Jacksonville did last year, the Chiefs pretty much did the same exact thing. So I think the Chiefs feel like if we have to play the Pittsburgh Steelers again, we feel confident that we can do the same thing we did to them in the regular season. But they're playing different football right now than they were at the beginning of the season. They were trying to find themselves without Le'Veon Bell. They lacked an identity without Bell. They've gotten that identity back with James Conner playing the way that he's playing, and that all of a sudden has been infectious. It's spread to the rest of the football team, and now they're playing with the confidence that we've seen the Steelers play with over the last 5 years or so under Mike Tomlin. So it is what it is, you know. I think they can compete with anybody in the AFC conference right now with the way they're playing, you know. So Syndico says, I already had penciled this in as a loss, but I was expecting a historic ass-kicking record points at Heinz Field. I guess he meant he wasn't expecting a historic ass-whooping. Nobody was. You know, I didn't think the Panthers had a chance to win this game either, but I didn't expect them to give up 52 points. Look, listen, the Panthers have given it up this year, and the defense isn't great, but I couldn't account for the mistakes, the blown coverages, and 52 points. I don't think anybody could have accounted for that. You know, I just thought it would be something like, 34-23. You know, that's the kind of game I was expecting. You lose by double digits, but it's a fairly competitive game that you never really had a chance to win. I didn't see it coming the way that it came, but nonetheless, Dark Sealer 1995 says, the impressive thing about the Steelers are the fact that they found a new young defensive leader in TJ Watt. He's been great for this team and has helped the pass rush for sure. Anybody named Watt is a guy that I'm all about putting on my football team. And TJ has been outstanding for the Steelers since they drafted him in the first round last season. Ricky L says, how in the hell does Eric Reed get tossed for his hit on Ben, but TJ Watt can hit Cam leading with his helmet? Excuse me. I thought that the tossing of Eric Reed was bogus. I thought that they overreacted to the reaction of the players. Was it a penalty? Yes, it was, but by no means should he have been ejected. There was a hit on Cam earlier in the season against Atlanta. That was a hit you get ejected for. You know, that's the kind of hit. There was a hit on Andrew Luck in the Cincinnati game, week 1, I believe it was. I think. Don't get me to lying, but I know it was a Cincinnati Bengals defender in that game, in one of those games. I think it was against Andrew Luck, and he got ejected. I was fine with that. This looked nothing like those hits that were ejectable offenses. This didn't look like that. So I thought that was a bad call. And as for the TJ Watt hit, clean hit. If you're bitching about that, then you're one of those softies that thinks that the league needs to clean up hitting. And I don't want to hear anything. That was a clean hit. It hit him in his shoulder. They already protect these quarterbacks enough as it is. That was clean football right there. That was a good hit. Put his face mask, more so than the crown of his helmet, more of his face mask. And even if it was the crown of his helmet, I'm all for hitting guys as long as you don't hit them in their head or neck area. I'm all for it. He didn't slam his weight down on him. Nothing. Love that hit. Thought it was a really good football play. Syndico says, they exposed every single weakness we had. Backup O-lineman, defensive coordinator, Christian McCaffrey in pass blocking, and Cam still has lingering shoulder problems, no vertical game. All of it. You hit every single point on the head. McCaffrey has always been pedestrian as a pass blocker. He's a small guy. There's not a lot there for him to get done. I've seen smaller guys get more done in pass blocking, though, so that's no excuse. But in any event, you've had issues all year defensively. I guess because you brought up the defensive coordinator piece. Every year you lose a defensive coordinator to a head coaching job, so eventually it's going to catch up to you. You can't just keep promoting defensive positional coaches and expect all of them to just hit home runs. You know, one year it's McDermott, the next year it's Wilkes. You know, it's hard. I think is it Dwayne Washington? You got one of those Washington guys, somebody like that as your coordinator now. At some point you knew you had to fail at coordinator. You had to get one of these wrong. So it is what it is. I didn't know anything about Cam's injury shoulder-wise until tonight. So that's news to me. But because he's looked so good throwing the football, as you mentioned, not a lot of deep shots this season, but I've seen no problems with him throwing the deep comeback, 17 yards on the outer hash. He's fired those footballs effortlessly. So I didn't think anything was wrong. I just thought they didn't have the guys to stretch the field vertically that they were comfortable getting the football to. And so they have done a really good job of using play action fake to get chunk plays in the intermediate portions of the field. When they go play action fake, they're not looking to break off a 57-yard touchdown bomb. And maybe that's the reason why. They're looking to hit you for 17 on a comeback to Funches, where he goes up, climbs the ladder, comes down with the football, or he runs a deep dig 21 yards down the field and climbs the ladder over the middle of the field. That's what they're looking to do. And maybe that has a lot to do with Cam's shoulder. I wasn't aware until tonight, though. Ricky L says, when it comes to the Steelers, I ask myself, can they beat their kryptonite this year? That's the question. Can they beat the New England Patriots? If they can't beat the Patriots and they play them again this year because they both won the division last year, if they can't beat them, then they're not good enough to make it to the Super Bowl. They've got to find a way to beat New England. And that game may come down to who will get a first-round bye, because I think the Chiefs are going to continue to play outstanding and exceptional football, and I think they're going to claim one of those first-round byes. So then the question becomes, who's going to get the second one? Because even if they lose one game, the Patriots are going to lose again at some point this season. I think they should be on upset alert this week against Tennessee on the road. Tennessee's coming off of a big-time performance. They're playing with a ton of confidence. The Patriots are all kinds of banged up. You probably still won't get Sony Michel. Gronk may be out again. They're all kinds of banged up. And they were not impressive on Sunday night versus Green Bay. They could easily stumble into Tennessee and stumble out with a L. So they're going to lose again at some point, are the Patriots. Generally, they get their ass handed to them in Miami late in the season. They've got that game coming up a little bit later on. That's generally an L for them. They're going to lose again somewhere down the line. So even if Kansas City slips up and loses a game or two, still think they're going to have a good enough mark to get them in as a bye week participant. I don't know if they'll be the number one seed, because remember, the Patriots own the head-to-head. So if both of those teams end up 13-3 when the season's done, obviously the Patriots would get the nod because of the head-to-head win over the Chiefs. So it's going to be big for the Steelers, because they got the tie, so they're not going to finish with the same record as either the Chiefs or the Patriots. So that's not a situation that they have to worry about, but they still need to try to have a better record than them in the win column, more wins. And so they've got to find a way to beat the Patriots this year. They already lost to the Chiefs. Reese says, damn, Lou, a 50 burger, they don't give a rip about Le'Veon Bell. They know that they need to move on. I talked about that on my podcast. I listened to Mike Tomlin's comments before the game against Baltimore, and they were telling. And that told me everything I needed to know about where the where the psyche was of this Steelers organization as to it regarding Le'Veon Bell, as pertaining to Le'Veon Bell. And that was a very profound statement that he made. Nathan Long says, as a Saints fan, I only have one thing to say. Thank you, Steelers. Syndico, can you please spell Louie T. Live right? Can you stop spelling it wrong? I'm almost missing your comments because you're not spelling it correctly. Even after tonight, we still going to contend for the division. I love our chances in the next 4 games. I said this at the top of the program. This doesn't change my mind on the Panthers from a NFC South perspective. You still got everything you want in front of you. The only thing that I say is that I don't know if you're elite. I thought maybe there was an outside chance if you come in and you compete, you somehow come out of this game with a win or a close loss, that would have shown me a lot. But getting your ass handed to you like this shows me that you're not on the same level with the elites of this league. But you may be a step down, and that's fine. That's totally okay, because you can still win the division being a notch below the elites in this league. Reese says, damn those Saints, Lou. Damn them to hell. Signing Des Bryant, reason number 1004, I hate them. hey, man, he's going to make them that much better of a football team. I talked about that on the podcast as well. Captain Spartan says, I'm honestly in no words right now. I'm still worried about the Patriots and Chiefs. Well, if we take your word at face value, they're still tanking. So they're doing a hell of a job tanking this year, you know? Syndico says, real talk, question for everyone. Did Eric Reed deserve to be ejected from this game? This guy still has a target on his back. And the 15-yard penalty, I get that. It was a glancing blow at best. No, I thought the penalty was legit. As you mentioned, it was a glancing blow, but it was to the head-neck area of Roethlisberger, which then prompted his head to hit the ground. Easily could have caused a concussion. But no, in no way, shape, or form should that have warranted an ejection. I just think it was and I don't think this has anything to do with his stance on the anthem or any of that. I think that this had everything to do with the reaction that it caused. It looked worse than it was, and the reaction that it caused, I thought that they felt like in order to keep a game that was starting to get out of control in control, they needed to toss him from the game because, and even though he went to Ben and he dapped them up and they were all good, the Steelers' offensive linemen weren't. And so they were like, you know what? We don't want this thing to go sideways. We know Reed has a little bit of a temper. This thing could get out of control. Let's just go ahead and nip it in the bud and toss him out of the game. And I think it had more to do with that than him having a target on his back. But that's just my opinion. Yes, it was bogus, though. Let's see. All right. Silver V says, when Cam has a bad game, it's awfully hard to watch. Is he an elite quarterback or not? Yeah, he's elite for his particular skill set. There aren't many that do what he does in this league better than he does. You know, there are a number of guys in this league that are dual threat quarterbacks, but not many are better than Cam Newton at being a dual threat quarterback. Is he elite in the traditional sense of sitting in the pocket and slinging it? No, he's not in the upper echelon when you're talking about sitting in the pocket, dissecting defenses, and he can do that at times, but he's inaccurate at times. He throws a very high football. He's got a high release point when he throws the football. The ball can get away from him at times. But when he's dialed in and when he's used as a runner, there aren't many better at the quarterback position than Cam Newton in the league. And there are only a select few that we even put in the same breath with him in terms of dual threat quarterbacks. And so, yeah, he's elite. You know, I don't think he gets the credit that he deserves. For as much punishment as he takes, he doesn't miss football games. The man got in a car accident one year and missed, I think, a game and came back the following week. Or he might have even played in that week's game. It's ridiculous. The dude, it's almost like he's built out of steel. You know, he's a big part of their run game. He takes hits, and yet he doesn't miss games. So, yeah, it's I've seen Cam look bad, and you're right. When he's off, it's hard to watch. But those are few and far between, and he's a really good football player. He's elite in my book, yes. The Mister says, Lou, let's be honest. The Panthers have a problem with explosive elite teams. They look slow against fast teams. Yeah, that is one way to put it. You know, when you've got some aging football players on your team, that can happen. Julius Peppers is on your football team. Thomas Davis, albeit he's a athletic marvel, the man's 30-some-odd years old, you know. He's getting up there in age. You know, Captain Munderland is on your defense as well. Mike Adams is a 30-plus-year-old safety playing outstanding football, I might add, okay? But you get where I'm going with this. They're a very veteran-laden defense, all right? Not a lot of young, vibrant guys. Even Luke Kuechly's been doing it for a while now. I mean, he's got to be approaching year 8 to 10, somewhere in that vicinity. He's been doing this for quite some time in Carolina. So even he's getting up there in age. And I watching him tonight, he looks like he may have lost just a half a step. Not a full step, okay? He's still tracking guys down sideline to sideline, but even he, I think, has lost a half a step. So I honestly don't think that they have all of the pieces necessary to be the defense that they once were. So I think they're slowly trying to put those things back together. You know, Shaq Thompson is a tremendous athlete. You look at Dante Jackson, tremendous athlete. I still think that where they're deficient right now is on the defensive line, and it's crazy to say that because there was a string of years where they kept drafting defensive linemen. You know, whether it was Vernon Butler, Star Lotulelei, or K'Wan Short. They drafted the kid out of Texas A&M, Deshaun Hall, who I wasn't a huge fan of. They've tried to infuse this defense with young players, and they haven't gotten the production out of some of these younger guys that they have hoped. So we'll see what happens. Atlanta Fan 21 says, you think the Falcons are going to be able to steal second place spot, if not the first place? I talked about the Falcons on the podcast, so you're going to have to check that out. But I can tell you this much. Falcons are very dangerous. I'm just say that, and I'm going to leave it at that. I don't know if they're going to be good enough to catch either the Saints or the Falcons, but the Falcons have already beaten the Panthers once this season, and they could go for the season sweep, but they struggle in Carolina. I don't know the last time they won in Carolina, so I don't see that happening, but you never know. Captain Spartan says, I still want to love him because he's a first-round pick, but what do we do with Artie Burns? We already gave up on our 2013 first-round pick. Shazier is no guarantee to come back, but is all right. Look, you don't hit on every first-round pick. You'd like to. You know, the better organizations in a 7-year stretch, if you've got a first-round pick for 7 straight years, the teams that do it the right way will hit on at least 5 of those first-round picks. You can't miss on first-round picks very often. You know, you're not going to hit on every first-round pick. You're not. It's just the nature of the business. But looks like T.J. Watt is a hit. Shazier was a hit until he got injured. You know, these things happen. You know, and we'll see what happens with. But you hit on some other guys. Wasn't Cam Hayward a first-round pick? I believe he was. He's been outstanding for you. I'm not sure if he was or not. Don't quote me on that. But in any event, you know, you're going to hit, you're going to miss. It happens in this league. You with first and second rounders, you have to hit more than you miss. I wasn't a fan of Artie Burns coming out of the U. You know, I thought he had some tremendous ball skills, but I thought he had a lot of work to do. And I told you that when you drafted him. And right now, he's a guy that has been benched in favor of Cody Sensabaugh. And maybe he'll grow from this and be a better football player because of it. You may not see the fruits of your labor with him. He may ultimately be better somewhere else down the road. We'll see. You know how that goes. But there's nothing to do with him. He's depth right now, and you just continue to work with him and see if you can get anything out of him. JP says, what an ass whooping. And he also says, Dante Jackson is a rookie, and he's not old enough to get those offensive pass interference calls. I agree. You know, you can't be bitching and complaining about that. You're not at that level yet. AB is a stud, so he's going to get the benefit of the doubt, and you're a rookie. So you're not going to get that call. And it wasn't egregious enough of a push-off to get the call anyway. And they were both hand fighting. So you're not going to get that call. JP says, I've said multiple times that Le'Veon Bell would not play in the Steelers uniform again. Nothing can convince me otherwise unless there's a video of him walking onto the practice facility. You're going to be wrong, JP, because I think he's going to come back next week. Again, I told everybody that would listen, he'll be back by week 11. That's the last week he can sign his franchise tag and get credit for this season, which if I'm Le'Veon Bell, there's no way I allow a season to go by the wayside. I need credit. I need that in the worst case scenario, the Steelers want to play hardball and they want to franchise me again. They'll be paying me a pretty penny, you know. Whereas if I let them get away with it this year, they can pay me the same exact thing next year, and you'll just be doing this whole song and dance all over again. So he'll be back. It's just a matter of how they decide to use him when he comes back. Black LB says, I sure hope the Panthers aren't relying on Matt Khalil when he gets back, because dude is trash. That's coming from a scarred Vikings fan. So JP says, Panthers were a complete disgrace in this game. They're so much better than this. They are. It happens. It happens in this league. I mean, how many times have we seen teams get their asses handed to them? I mean, the Falcons got their ass handed to them by the Steelers earlier in the season. It happens. And I think the Falcons are a good football team. It happens. They're just not elite. And that's what happens when you're not elite. On any given day, you don't play your best brand of football. If you're not elite, it can get out of control. It can get out of hand. And you saw that today with the Panthers. Reese says, hope you're ready Sunday, Lou. Your team may break their franchise record in offensive yards. Ree, you're not going to play that reverse psychology game on me, bro. It's not going to work. You go into that game fully expecting your team to win. You know that you have a chance to win. You know that we can't score, and you know that you have a chance. You're favored in the game, Ree. Don't play that game with me. I'm not falling for your shenanigans, okay? You can play that with somebody else. I know what you're doing, and you can stop right now, all right? You're not going to get me with that, all right? Reese says, Julius Peppers wears 90 because that's how old he is. John Perez says, do you think the arrival of Eric Reed disrupted the defensive chemistry in the locker room? No, I do not. Dark Sealer 1995 says, the Panthers can sum up this game with one big poop emoji. Absolutely. Captain Spartan 04 says, still not a fan of our defensive coordinator, Keith Butler. One thing for sure is that he's pretty good at creating blitz packages. Let's just not put our outside linebackers in coverage. That's the problem with the Steelers, is that I think when you start, hell, the inside linebackers as well. Anytime you get their linebackers out in space, I think they can be exploited. And that's why I think the Steelers, that's where they miss Ryan Shazier. His ability to run with tight ends up the seam and running backs out of the backfield. He was so dynamic. Speed-wise, they need an upgrade at speed at the linebacker position. Cloud says, you know what I meant, man. A bell cow, LOL. I know what you meant. He said, Clement haven't been playing well as of late. We need to get a running back, man. I know what you meant. I was being funny. Yeah. Ricky L says, I agree about the hit. They have called it before, so just be consistent. I mean, I hear what you're saying. See, we got 2 minutes left. Dark Sealer 1995 says the Panthers have no one on offense that can stretch the field. Well, they've got speed. I'm thinking that Cam's injury to his shoulder is a little bit more serious than I thought. I didn't know he even had an injury to his shoulder. But, I mean, a guy like Curtis Samuel can stretch the field vertically. He can run. I think they've got some guys. They got Demir Bird, who is a speed threat. He doesn't play a lot, but they got guys that can run. If they thought that speed was a problem, Demir Bird would be a guy that they put on the field a little bit more and try to stretch the field vertically. I just think that Cam isn't capable of doing that right now. So he also says they have to rely on trick plays and good play calling because their best receiver is a 99-year-old Greg Olsen. Hey, I'll take that 99-year-old Greg O any day of the week. You see the catch he made last week, that one-hander in the end zone? Take that guy any day of the week. JP says, do you think the Panthers should have gotten a true number one receiver at the trade deadline? They can't keep relying on Greg Olsen or else he's going to keep getting hurt. No, I don't think there's anything that they needed to do at the trade deadline. They like DJ Moore. They spent the first-round pick on him. They think that he's going to evolve into a true number one type of receiver. So we'll see what happens. You know, he's a young guy. They have Funchess. I like Funchess a lot. I think they're fine at receiver right now with the parts that they have. Could they use more help at receiver? Sure. They could use about one more difference-making wide receiver, but they have some quality guys. I'll say that. FBG Tony says, I like how this Steelers defense has bounced back since the first month of the season. Like the way they rebounded. Do you think they will keep this up? I can't be sure if they're going to keep it up. Like I said, I still think they have deficiencies. It seems like Joe Hayden is due for an injury any week now. And so you can't count on him to stay healthy. When he gets injured, and then they're really thin at the secondary and the cornerback position. If he stays healthy, that makes a huge difference in the secondary. But I still think they've got deficiencies on that defense. But they're playing good football right now. Can they keep it up? It's possible. It's very possible. If they stay relatively healthy, I don't see why not. But we'll see. FBG Tony says, CMC is a dog, bro. Damn, he's a beast. Sheesh. 3 more touchdowns tonight. Talked about him on the podcast, man. I'm looking forward to hearing from you guys. If you haven't listened to the podcast, choose wisely. Louie T Network podcast. I put some questions out there for you guys, looking for your response. Check out the podcast. But we've hit our hour mark. And so I appreciate you guys joining me tonight. Syndico says both tackles should be back for the next game, FYI. And hopefully that will help strengthen up that offensive line because they were putrid tonight. In any event, really appreciate you guys joining me. As always, if it's not your man T, it's not the best NFL coverage it could be. Make sure you like this video. Subscribe to the Louie T Network if you haven't already done so. Make sure that you check out the Louie T Network podcast. It's up and available on iTunes, on Stitcher, on Google Music Play, and, of course, the website, louietnetwork.net. Remember, I will join you guys on Sunday Night Football overtime. I'll see you for that. And I don't know what else I was about to say. I lost my train of thought. But I'm your man, Louie T, signing off. Panthers destroyed on Thursday Night Football. Steelers, huge win as they win their 5th straight game, move to 6-2-1 on the season with the 52-21 victory over the Carolina Panthers. Panthers drop to 6-3. I still think the Panthers are a damn good football team despite the ass thrashing that took place tonight. I'm your man, Louie T, signing off. I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one.
Louie T Network.